Okay, I'm going to get started by just welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Nice to see all of you guys here this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Today is what's called our group learning program, where each Sunday and Wednesday we get together with students in order to help you guys understand the path to enlightenment that was taught by the Buddha. We use this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, as our foundational text for this program. And you can learn here at the temple, and you can also learn online, because I know many of you guys are probably traveling, but you can learn gradually the foundational teachings that it takes to move the mind to enlightenment. What enlightenment is where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others are completely eliminated from the mind. And this is occurring through training of the mind. There's no belief in the teachings of the Buddha. You're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. Instead, in the present moment, in your day-to-day life, you're learning, examining, and investigating teachings. You're then reflecting on those teachings to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you're practicing his teachings, integrating the tools and techniques that he taught into your day-to-day life so that you can train your mind and uproot certain pollutions that he discovered in your mind. And by training your mind and uprooting these pollutions, this is where the qualities of enlightenment start to shine through. Not only do you experience those qualities that I just mentioned, but you also experience focus, concentration, clarity, deep memory. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships any longer. It's not even possible for an enlightened being to experience a bad mood. Right now, you probably experience a bad mood from time to time, but that's just because the mind hasn't been trained and well disciplined. And you can improve that through understanding the teachings of the Buddha and training your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. So the way that we start each one of our classes is we start with meditation. So I'm going to guide you in a meditation session, and then afterwards I'm going to move into a talk to be able to help you understand chapter 20 of our book. That's where we're at today, is chapter 20. This chapter is titled Animal to Human, the Evolution of Our Consciousness. I'm going to help you to be able to see how this human existence that you're currently experiencing has come from multiple animal existences. And remember, there's no belief here. So what I share with you can be independently verified. So you'll be able to see how what you've experienced is coming into this human world, but oftentimes the unenlightened mind functions very much like an animal. You're not an animal. You're a human being, and you can function like a better and better human being. But an unenlightened mind that's polluted with these pollutions that the Buddha discovered, it functions very much like an animal. So part of what you're doing on this path to enlightenment is you're shedding your animalistic instincts and becoming more and more of a human being. So I'm going to start you off with meditation, and then we'll move into this talk, helping you to understand the evolution of our consciousness. If you'd like to join for meditation, I start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. And these chants are on a laminated sheet over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself and get a chanting sheet if you like, because you're welcome to chant along if you'd like to chant along. For anybody who's online, if you guys would like to get access to these chanting sheets, you can go to buddhadailywisdom.com and click on free books. And from there, you go about halfway down or 3/4 of the way down the page, and you'll see the daily chanting sheet. And from there, you'll be able to see what we're actually chanting here at the temple. And you guys are also welcome to chant along as well. These chants are in the Pali language. This is the historical language of the teachings of the Buddha. Whenever you look at his original teachings, they're going to be in what's called the Pali language. But here on these chanting sheets, you can also see the English translations as well. The origins of chanting is that during the lifetime of the Buddha, he taught everything oral. The things weren't written down during his lifetime because the technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world. You probably don't see writing something down as technology, but 2,500 years ago, this was technology to write things down, and it didn't make its way to that region of the world yet. The Buddha taught in what we consider to be Northeast India. So the technology to write things down didn't exist. So they used chanting as a way to remember the teachings. That every 2 weeks they would come together and they would recite his teachings orally in order to commit his teachings to memory. So there isn't anything mystical or magical here with these chants. It's not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. If you've ever been presented chanting in that way, that's not the way that the Buddha actually used it. opposite. He used chanting as a way to help his students commit the teachings to memory. So you can see from its origins that there isn't anything mystical or magical about it. If you look at the English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha actually created these chants himself. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death. Because if you learn from a teacher how to move from the anger and the sadness and the frustration and all those other discontent feelings like guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, and others, and this teacher helped you to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state, which is a permanent mental state, and this teacher didn't want anything from you. They didn't expect anything from you. You would probably have a lot of respect and gratitude for that person too. So during the lifetime of the Buddha and long after his death, even now, people have an enormous amount of respect and appreciation for him, for what he did in order to share his teachings. So that's where I suspect that these chants actually came from. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, you're no longer having an ego. You're not putting yourself above people, looking down on them, or putting yourself below people. So the Buddha wouldn't have walked around and handed out chants and say, here, chant this to me out of admiration and respect for me. That would be ego if somebody did that. That would be arrogance and pride and boastfulness. And someone who's gotten to enlightenment will not have had that. They would have eliminated that from their mind. So that's where I suspect that these chants came from. So if you'd like to chant along, I'm going to start the meditation with some chanting to help ease us into the meditation and actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. Then you're going to hear me come in with some guidance to be guiding you during the meditation, kind of giving you instructions of how to meditate while we're actually meditating, so you can learn how to meditate while we're actually doing it. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're just all meditating together. Everyone here at the temple and anyone joining us online will just be meditating together at the same time. Then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and that's where we'll start today's class. Now, during that period of time where it's quiet, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional things. You're probably going to hear a car going by. You might hear a dog barking or a bird chirping, because you can't be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. If your mind craves permanent quietness, when you hear a sound, you'll be frustrated and you'll be annoyed. But this is your own mind that's causing this. It's not the outside world that's causing you to be angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. This is something that you need to learn as part of your journey to enlightenment, that it's your own mind that's actually causing these feelings. And because your own mind is causing these feelings, you can eliminate it. So if your mind craves permanence, which every unenlightened mind will, when you experience impermanence, something changing, then you'll be frustrated, agitated, or annoyed. And you live in an impermanent world where things are constantly changing. So during that period of time where it's just quiet, you can understand that you will hear sounds. Someone might sneeze or cough, or you might hear some other sound. This is completely normal. Those sounds are impermanent. They will arise, they will change, and they will fade away. And after our chanting and coming out of the meditation, that's where I'm going to start today's class. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, there's 4 positions for meditation. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking. And the Buddha taught all 4 of these because you can't be in the same position permanently. It's not possible. You're going to need these different positions at different times. So you typically will learn these as part of your journey to enlightenment and how to use these different positions. So the seated position is oftentimes the one that people are learning and studying in the most when they first get started. So I'm going to give you a little bit of guidance on the seated position that can help you to find something that's comfortable for you. You can sit however you're comfortable. There isn't just one fixed way to sit. So find whatever's comfortable for you. What I'm going to share with you is just suggestions that you might consider, and then you decide for yourself what it is that you would like to do in terms of your sitting position. If you're on the floor, people typically like to have some cushions under their rear. This kind of softens your seat. And then if you're going to bring your legs together, bring them together lightly, where if you have your legs crossed really tight, this can impede the circulation and it can cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets their hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. And again, it allows the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. But again, it's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way, because that's not possible. So there's other options here. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you do whatever's comfortable for you. And for anybody who's maybe in a chair, or if you're at home on a bench or a sofa, or maybe in a wheelchair or something like this, you can also sit however you're comfortable. Sometimes people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me, I'm sitting in a chair with my legs crossed. So this is an option too. And then your hands and arms can go wherever you're comfortable. It's helpful if the upper body is erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back. This will keep the mind attentive and alert during your meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind can be overactive or uptight. So you like the upper body to be erect. This will help keep your mind attentive and alert. It'll also make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to get us started with some chanting, and then I'm going to come back in with some guidance for the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apiwa Teami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะขะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารนังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภควติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone. Welcome to everyone online as well who's joining us. This was breathing mindfulness meditation. This is a meditation that the Buddha used in addition to others to move his mind to enlightenment. But you can't just meditate your way to enlightenment. There's other things that you need besides meditation as well. So that's why as part of these classes, not only do we meditate, but we share teachings that are going to help you to make your way to this enlightened mental state. As I was mentioning before meditation, what enlightenment is where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. An individual has trained their mind to uproot certain pollutions in the mind, and because of that, the mind is now no longer experiencing any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others can be eliminated from the mind. Oftentimes in the unenlightened state, you might firmly believe that other people are causing you to be angry. You might think that other people are frustrating you or annoying you, but this is actually occurring from within your own mind. The Buddha discovered what is actually causing these feelings, and then he figured out the tools and techniques of how to uproot those pollutions out of the mind so that you can experience the peace and joy that is the enlightened mental state. Not only do you experience these benefits, but you'll notice that the mind is performing more optimally. The mind is focused, concentrated. You're having clarity of mind and deep memory. Your personal and professional relationships will be blossoming. They'll be at ease because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships. Right now, there's probably certain relationships that you really struggle in. And you might be bitter and harsh and hostile in those relationships. And as you're doing that, that's what you're putting out. That's what's going to come back to you as well. So you can transform all of this by training your mind. you can get to the point where your mind doesn't even experience a bad mood any longer. And again, it comes through training of the mind. It's not a 1 day thing, a 1 week thing, a 1 month thing, or even a 1 year thing. It takes multiple years. It took the Buddha 6 years to get to enlightenment. But the thing is that as you're gradually making your way to this mental state, the qualities of enlightenment are gradually shining through. It's not like you do all this work for 5 years and then miraculously, wow, there you're enlightened. It's not like a light switch that turns on and off. That you can think about it like the sun, and there's clouds in front of the sun, and as you peel back the clouds, the rays of the sun start shining through more and more. It's the same kind of thing. You might think about it like your mind is already enlightened, and then as you peel away these pollutions, the qualities of enlightenment start to shine through more and more and more. So meditation is an important aspect of your practice in order to move your mind to enlightenment, but there's many other things that an individual would need to learn. And that's why in this group learning program, it's a 7-month program where I gradually walk students through this particular book. You can actually get this for free. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can get it on Amazon. This is a really great foundational text that you're probably going to end up reading multiple times in order to understand the teachings of the Buddha based in his original words. The Buddha didn't teach any rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship. He didn't teach prayer or anything like that. If you've been exposed to those kinds of things in communities that are considered Buddhist, those aren't the original teachings of the Buddha. When you get to understand his original words, you can see that what he taught you to do is cultivate wisdom. What the mind's doing in the unenlightened state is it lacks wisdom about the world around you. That's why the mind struggles and has difficulties. There's certain natural laws that are affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. Just like the natural law of gravity affected all of us as we were growing up, and we lacked wisdom of that natural law, so therefore we struggled and had difficulties with it. We fell down, we hit our head, we bumped our elbows, we broke our toys. We really struggled because we didn't have wisdom of this natural law. And we cried and cried and cried. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law. And then we started realizing that we better tie our shoes a little bit tighter. We should look at the surface of the sidewalk when we're walking. We stopped being so giddy and bouncing around like a little kid all the time. And now we're at the point where we can climb ladders, we can ride bicycles, we can get on airplanes and fly all over the world because we've cultivated wisdom of this natural law of gravity. And this natural law of gravity affects you, whether you're aware of it or not. Well, there's other natural laws that are affecting you, whether you're aware of them or not. And when you lack wisdom of these natural laws, you will struggle and you'll have difficulties in life. This is why you have the anger and the sadness and the frustration. This is the mind having struggles. This is why you have difficulties in certain relationships, because the mind is unawake to these natural laws. And oftentimes what the mind does is you might blame what you experience on other people. This is very common for the mind with a lack of wisdom, that when you're experiencing certain struggles and difficulties in life, you might think that everybody else is causing this in your life. This is the mind's ego, the arrogance, thinking that I'm so great and everybody else is the problem. Well, if you get rid of this ego and understand that right now, if your mind is experiencing anger, sadness, frustration, and these other discontent feelings, there are certain things about this world that you don't currently understand. And the mind has certain struggles and difficulties. But you can cultivate wisdom to be able to understand the natural laws around you. And now you can navigate the world more harmoniously with all the beings around you. But as long as you go around thinking that you're so great and everyone else is the problem, you won't actually approach the teachings to be able to understand how to transform your mind and get to this enlightened mental state where you can experience the peace and the joy. So there's nothing in the teachings of the Buddha that are based in belief. You don't believe his teachings, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it. You don't believe in the natural law of gravity. You don't believe in it. You know that it's true because you can see the evidence of it. Every single day, you can see, there it is. There's the natural law of gravity. You can see it for your own eyes. So these natural laws that the Buddha taught, they're not apparent to the unenlightened mind because it lacks wisdom. But you're not interested in believing in these natural laws. You would like to see the truth for yourself. Because right now, there are certain beliefs that you probably hold in your mind that somebody convinced you to believe, or that maybe you convinced yourself to believe. And as long as you keep believing things, it's really easy for your mind to be shaken up. So what an individual is doing on the path to enlightenment is they're looking to cultivate wisdom, to understand the world around them and awaken to these natural laws. When we talk about awakening to enlightenment and getting to this enlightened mental state, what you're doing is cultivating wisdom. And the way you cultivate wisdom is you learn, you examine, you investigate the teachings of the Buddha. Then you reflect on those teachings to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you practice his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life in order to train your mind. And up to this point in this program, I've been teaching students all about how to do that. Now we're in chapter 20, which is titled Animal to Human, the Evolution of Our Consciousness, where you're starting to get exposure to something called the Cycle of Rebirth in the 5 realms of existence. What I teach people when they first get started on the path to enlightenment is to set aside the cycle of rebirth in the 5 realms of existence, because these are things that you can independently verify in the teachings of the Buddha, but people lack the wisdom of how to do that. Right now, you might be believing that you only have one life, perhaps, but you don't have any evidence that you only have one life. The only thing is that maybe right now you can't remember your past lives. But as you're training your mind on this path to enlightenment and you're uprooting certain pollutions out of your mind, it's very possible that you might experience the memories of your past lives. And if you didn't understand that there are past lives, you could be really shaken up by that. Say you start lifting this pollution out of your mind and you start observing your past lives and start having these vivid memories of being murdered, for example. And this can really shake you up if you didn't understand those were memories from your past life. Or say you start seeing beings that other people can't see, like the hell beings, afflicted spirits, which are like ghosts, or heavenly beings. Some people can actually see these formless beings. And if you don't understand that that is true reality, that those beings are actually real, you could maybe think you're going crazy when you start seeing these things. And some people can actually hear communication from beings from these other realms. And oftentimes people can be shaken up if they don't understand that that is actually true. You might actually think that you're going crazy. Maybe you think you're schizophrenic or something like this because you hear voices that other people don't actually hear. So the Buddha taught the cycle of rebirth, and he taught the 5 realms of existence because it's true. And this is actually what is occurring in your day-to-day life. And as you're training your mind and you're uprooting pollution out of your mind, if you start having any of these experiences where you're observing your past lives, where you're seeing beings that are formless beings, or you're having communication with beings that other people can't see, you could really think you're going crazy. But when you understand that this is the way that the world is, that these things do actually exist, then you can have a stable and steady mind. You don't have to be shaken up about that. So part of today's class is, yes, I'm going to teach you about this evolution of our consciousness from animal to human, but I'm also going to teach these 5 realms of existence. Understand that if this is your first time learning in a Buddhist temple or coming here to learn, this isn't where students typically will start. This is after someone has learned about 5 or 6 months with me. This is where they would normally now be at this point where they're actually learning. And then what I suggest for people to do is completely set aside this whole topic of the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence, because what's happened in the past, it's in the past. It doesn't matter anymore. What may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. It doesn't matter right now. What's important is that your mind is experiencing anger and sadness and frustration, guilt and shame and fear and stress and anxiety and things like this. And you need to know the core central teachings of the Buddha of how to train your mind to uproot that out of the mind. That's where it would be wise for somebody to start with. And that's why in this program and in this book, I start with those kinds of things. This particular chapter is chapter 20 of this book for a reason, because it usually takes someone a good 6 months before they get to this point in time. As I go in today's class, I'm going to pause at different times to open up for questions to see if you guys would like to ask any questions for clarification. If you're here at the temple and you would like to ask questions, we have microphones in the white bowl here in the center of the room. All you need to do is get a microphone, press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on. You just hold it up to your chin and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online. And then you can keep these microphones with you because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share your microphone. So when you're not using the microphone, if you could just turn it off, that would be good so that we're not getting any feedback. If you talk here without a microphone, the people online won't be able to hear you. And then for anybody who's online, if you guys would like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section. I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and then we'll be able to hear you here. We'll be able to hear you throughout the live stream as well. So this understanding of how the mind is moving from animal existences to this human existence, we need to first make sure you understand some of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. There's multiple problems that the Buddha discovered. There's 10 individual pollutions in the mind. He refers to them as the 10 fetters. The reason why he refers to them as a fetter is because during his lifetime, if you were someone who was a prisoner and they were trying to keep you confined to a certain area, they would attach a fetter around your ankle. What a fetter is a shackle and a chain and a ball. And this is how they would confine prisoners to a certain area. They would just keep them kind of in an open field with this fetter attached to their ankle. Nowadays, we put prisoners in jail cells or prison cells or things like that. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would attach this fetter to their ankle. So when the Buddha discovered these 10 individual pollutions, he called them fetters because it's keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state where the mind keeps experiencing anger and frustration and sadness over and over and over again. So the most detailed description of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind are called the 10 fetters. But when we talk about them from a high level, we refer to them as the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires. This is called craving, anger, and ignorance. What craving is, we also refer to this as desire or attachment or wants or expectations. This is where your mind is longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of your affection, thinking something external is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. It's almost like an unquenchable thirst where the mind chases and chases and chases and chases. And if you get what you want, you get happy. You get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if you don't get what you want, what you expect, what you're chasing, then you get painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. This is all being caused by the mind longing, yearning, seeking satisfaction externally. The mind, if it's really wants it to be sunny outside and you see that it's sunny outside, you'll get so happy, you'll get so excited. But then when it rains, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Here you can see that it's your own mind that's causing this because there's not even another human being involved here. It's just the mind craving permanence, wanting that sun to be permanent, when in reality the sun is not permanent. You live in an impermanent world. But as long as your mind craves permanence, when you experience impermanence, when things start changing, your mind's not going to like that. So if you get really happy when your bank account balance is up here, when it goes down here, you'll be sad, you'll be frustrated because you don't like that change. The mind is craving that permanence. Or if you've been in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend and you get so happy or excited when you're with this person, but then when you guys break up and the relationship's over, you'll be sad or frustrated or angry or lonely or bored, or you might be missing this person. It's not because of your love that's causing that. Love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. What's causing the mind to be angry or frustrated when you break up with that person is the mind is craving permanence, wanting this relationship to be permanent, when in reality you live in an impermanent world. So as long as your mind has craving, desire, attachment, where you're longing, yearning, and you're forming your inner feelings based on whether you acquire this thing or not, in some situations you're going to get what you want and you're going to be happy. In other situations you're not going to get what you want and you're going to be angry or frustrated or agitated or some other painful feeling. So essentially what the unenlightened mind is doing is it's going up and down, up and down, up and down. At different times during your day, you might experience peacefulness or calmness here and there, but it's only a matter of time before your mind experiences the anger and the frustration or some other painful feeling. So this is called craving, desire, attachment. This is the longing, the yearning, chasing after the objects of your affection, having this unquenchable thirst. If you've ever been in the mall and you saw like a brand new pair of shoes or a new phone or a video game or something like this, and you were like, oh, I just got to get that. Oh, I just want that so bad. The mind is longing, yearning for it. And now if you go into the shoe store and they have your size, you're happy, you're excited. Wow, you got what you wanted. But when they don't have your size, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. This is because of your mind's craving, desire, attachment, forming your inner feelings based on this external thing. And as your anger is arising, the mind, with its lack of wisdom, will falsely attribute that anger to something external. And that anger is very painful for you to experience. So what the mind tends to do is it tends to push people away, or it pushes a situation away. This is called aversion. And the mind thinks that mom is the problem, or dad, or brothers, or sisters, or friends, or coworkers. And you might have been pushing people out of your life, or pushing a situation out of your life, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But you can see that that didn't solve the problem because you still get angry, you still get frustrated, you still get annoyed. If this person was the problem, when you push them away, you would be peaceful from that point forward. But you can see that your mind isn't that way, that when you push these people away or the situation away, you still experience frustration, agitation, or annoyance. The second thing you'll do when you get angry is you might be bitter and harsh and hostile with other people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. This is almost like an animal growling and roaring at another being, trying to fear that person into doing things your way. It's like, why didn't you do things my way, right? The mind gets really angry and frustrated, and you become bitter and harsh and hostile with this other person. This is because the mind thinks that the anger that you're experiencing is coming from this other person, and you think the way to fix this is to force this other person to do things your way. But what's really occurring is your mind is having craving, desire, attachment, wanting and expecting people to do things your way. So as long as you're being bitter and harsh and hostile, growling and roaring like an animal, you can't live harmoniously with all beings, because some of those people are going to choose to leave out of your life. They're not interested in that harshness and bitterness and hostility. Or the third thing you'll do when this anger is arising, and because of these cravings producing that anger, is you might put your expectations on people, trying to control people and force them to do things your way. People might actually be doing this to you as well, where they're trying to control you and force you to do things their way. The mind thinks, if I can just get people to do things my way, everything will be perfect. So you might have your parents trying to force you to do things their way because they're wanting to get those conditioned pleasant feelings. And you might be putting your expectations on other people, trying to force them to do things your way. So these cravings, where the mind is longing, yearning, and wanting things to be a certain way, is going to ultimately produce anger. And this hostility and bitterness and harshness is going to come up in the mind, where you're pushing people away, you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to them, or you're putting your expectations on people. And in this situation, you can't live harmoniously with all beings. And where all of this is coming from is this third one, which is called ignorance, or some people refer to it as delusion, or confusion, or misunderstanding. I don't tend to use the word ignorance because this is kind of like a derogatory word, and then the Buddha wouldn't have spoke this way. People are translating what he said into English. A better way to think about this is the unknowing of true reality, that the mind in the unenlightened state just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. And because it lacks wisdom of what's truly going on within your own mind, it continues to stay stuck in this cycle that you'll crave and crave and crave, and you'll want things to be a certain way. And in some cases, you get those pleasant feelings. In other cases, you get the painful feelings. And now when the painful feelings are arising, you'll push people away, be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or put your expectations on people. And where this is coming from is the lack of wisdom, the confusion, the misunderstanding, the unknowing of true reality. So while we call this craving, anger, and ignorance, it's really because of ignorance that craving and anger continues to exist in the mind. And that's why the teachings of the Buddha are all about cultivating wisdom. You need to have wisdom where you can independently verify what I'm saying is true. So when I'm sharing teachings like this with you, you can hear the things that I'm sharing with you, and you can see how your mind is actually experiencing the very things that I'm talking about. Even though I've never met many of you, I can describe for you what it is that you're experiencing, because I understand the human mind, and I understand that these pollutions are in your mind and you're experiencing these kinds of things. But you can transform this and you can eradicate this from the mind. But in terms of understanding your evolution from animal to human, and now that you're in this human existence, this mind that you have has craving, anger, and ignorance. And so does an animal. An animal is going to crave and crave and crave. This is why animals hoard their food. They will hoard their food because when there's craving in the mind, there's selfishness, and the mind will be very selfish. You might be hoarding your money or hoarding your jewelry or hoarding your clothing. You're holding on to it really tight. And then if somebody impacts it, like maybe someone damages your clothes or damages your jewelry or something like this, there's this anger that comes up. It's just like an animal. An animal's going to hoard their food, and then when another animal comes towards it, they're going to get angry and they're going to growl and roar at this other animal. And where this is coming from is the ignorance. And in the animal existences, we can't cultivate enough wisdom to be able to transform this and get to enlightenment. An individual that is an animal is going to need to be reborn into the human world in order to be able to cultivate the mind enough to be able to experience enlightenment. And all of you guys are in the human world. You have the ability to cultivate your mind and understand what it is that I'm sharing with you, so that now over time you could gradually transform your mind to experience more and more peace and more joy. But you need to be able to see the truth in this for yourself. There's something called personal existence view in conceit. This is part of the ego. This exists in the animal mind as well, and it also exists in the human mind. This is a topic that I taught back in chapter 16. What personal existence view is where the mind is holding on to this body or to the mind, thinking that this is who you are. The mind will cling to this self-image or the self-identity in the mind, thinking that this is who you are. So if you've ever been in the mirror and you were concerned about a wrinkle or a mole or a pimple or a gray hair, or you're starting to lose your hair, this is the mind clinging to the self-image, thinking that this is who you are. And now you're shaken up when you see that, because the mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. Or if you spilled some spaghetti sauce or chocolate ice cream on your clothing and you were embarrassed by this is the mind having personal existence view. Your mind was shaken up because you weren't being perceived by others in a certain way. Or the self-identity is where the mind is clinging to an identity of who you think you are, like your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, maybe your nationality, your job or occupation, like I am Chinese, or I am American, or I am Indian, or I am German, or any of this I am. This is an identity that the mind is clinging to, thinking that this is who you are. And now if somebody says something positive, they say, oh, Chinese people are lovely and kind and warm and gentle, right? You might get so happy because now they're talking about me and I am Chinese. But now it's only a matter of time before someone says something degrading and disparaging about your nationality and where you come from. And now you're frustrated, you're agitated or annoyed. So as long as you're holding on to that personal existence view, that self-identity, in some cases you're going to be happy, in some cases you're going to be frustrated and agitated. And you can't go out into the world and train everybody else to do things your way. It's just not possible. So when you have personal existence view in the mind, you're going to sometimes experience happiness and sometimes sadness or frustration. And you can eliminate this from the mind. But in the animal existences, you need this personal existence view. Because if you were a deer out in the middle of a forest and you didn't have personal existence view, and there was a predator that was lurking in the woods and you weren't on guard to kind of protect this body, you would die. So you kind of need this personal existence view. Also, in the animal world, there's this conceit. What conceit is it's the arrogance, the pride, the measuring and comparing, putting yourself above people or putting yourself below people. You might be doing that in this human existence where you're judging other people and you're either looking down on them or you're looking up to them with such awe and admiration that you're shaken up when you're around them. Maybe like your boss, maybe a celebrity or a famous politician. If you're around this person, you might be shaken up thinking that you're below them. This is coming from the animal world. In the animal world, we needed conceit. If we didn't have conceit in the animal world, we wouldn't have been able to survive. So when we were a pack of wolves, we needed to know who's the alpha male and who's the alpha female, because they're teaching us how to hunt and they're teaching us how to survive. If we didn't know who they were, we wouldn't have learned as a wolf how to be a better and better wolf. If we were in an elephant herd and we didn't know who the matriarch of our herd was, we wouldn't have been able to survive, because she's showing us where is the migration paths, where are the watering holes, where is the food. We needed to follow her in order for her to show us how to live a good life as an elephant. So in the animal world, there's a pecking order. Right? There's beings that are higher and beings that are lower. But here in the human world, we don't need that. It just causes us difficulties when we go around in social situations and we think we're above people or we think that we're below people. It just shakes up your mind. And now when you're around people, you might be talking down to certain people and you might be talking up to certain people, and your mind is shaken up in these situations. And what you would like to get to is ultimately where you treat everybody equally. But because your mind has been in many animal existences, when you come into this human world, the mind has this conceit or this ego that gets formed and more deeply rooted in the mind, where you go into a certain situation and you might be looking for a pecking order, and you might be judging other people to determine if you're above them or you're below them. And this is very challenging for the mind. It can be somewhat exhausting to go into a social situation and try to figure out who you're above and who you're below. And now you have to talk to the people that are below you in one way, and you talk to the people who are above you in a different way. And this can really tax the mind and cause a burden that it can be really exhausting. So in the animal world, these things were needed, but in the human world, we don't actually need these things. We can actually shed this, and you will experience a much more peaceful and joyful existence when you treat everybody around you equally. So here in our society, we have people who are performing certain roles, like we have a king in Thailand, right? And we also have people that sweep the street outside. These individuals are all equal. Now, other people might look at them as being higher or lower, but your mind can get to the point where you understand that, yes, they have different lifestyles, but in terms of their role in society, they're equally important. We like to have a king who's doing a really good job as a king, but we also like to have clean streets as well. We don't need to look down on people or look up to people. We can treat everybody equally. But because the mind is so used to these animal existences, it really struggles to be able to do that. But that's part of what this journey to enlightenment is to shed these animalistic instincts and get to the point where you can treat everybody equally, and now you can reside in the world more peacefully. There's certain current and previous lives that you've had where your mind's been conditioned to think a certain way. And those are some of the examples with conceit and personal existence view that I'm mentioning. That as we go through life and we age, we adopt certain conditioning in our mind. So for example, when we were born as a baby, we didn't have anger and hatred in our mind. We didn't have conceit at the time of our birth. We didn't go into the nursery at the hospital hating other babies, right? That's something that we developed over time within our own mind. We didn't go into the nursery at the hospital saying, hey, my hat looks better than your hat. My gloves look better than your gloves. My crib is better than your crib, right? We don't think that way as a little baby because we don't have that developed in our mind. But over time, as we grow and we develop and we conform to what's going on around us, our mind adopts this conditioning and we start thinking this way. So what you're doing on this path to enlightenment is you're shedding this conditioning. You are purifying your mind and no longer allowing the mind to do these unwise and unwholesome things. So it's important to be able to recognize what your mind's doing so that you can actually shed these animalistic instincts. So through this cycle of rebirth and continuous births, through the cycle of rebirth, there's been these continuous difficulties of experiencing sickness, aging, and death over and over and over again. That's probably a really challenging time for you. When you experience sickness, as you age, that's going to be more and more challenging. And as you die, that's going to be challenging for you. Unless you train your mind, these things won't be a challenge for you. And these things can also be a challenge for you when you see these happening to other people, like your parents or your siblings, when you see them getting sick, or you see them aging, or they experience death. This can be a real challenging time for you. But you can actually transform your mind where you don't have those kinds of things that are occurring. So these are the problems, or some of the problems anyway, that the Buddha discovered in the mind. And then he taught you how to eradicate this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you these 5 realms of existence so you can understand what the Buddha taught about these 5 realms. And then I'll invite you to ask me any questions that you like about these 5 realms. And then I'm going to show you how an individual moves in and out of these realms, and how now that you're in this human realm, it's the very best, most ideal existence for you. But because you've been moving in and out of these realms, your mind has been conditioned to think a certain way and function a certain way, but you can purify that and get to the point where your mind's completely peaceful and completely joyful. So there's this heavenly realm. This heavenly realm is a realm where beings only experience pleasant feelings. So happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. These beings can actually cultivate their consciousness to attain enlightenment, but oftentimes they lack motivation because they're very complacent, because they only experience pleasant feelings. In the heavenly realm, these beings are formless beings. They don't have physical form, and it's not a permanent existence. Everything around you is constantly changing. It is impermanent. You can see that this is a universal truth, that things are constantly changing. And unfortunately, some people think that this heavenly realm is permanent. You might have been taught that, but you can look around the world and you can see nothing around you is permanent, that all these things are constantly changing. This is a universal truth about the world that we live in. So this particular realm and all the others are impermanent, meaning that it's not a permanent existence to be in the heavenly realm. These beings are still in the cycle of rebirth. They still need to get to enlightenment, and they need to escape that if they choose. But because they're oftentimes complacent, they lack motivation, and they're reborn down into these other realms. Then there's the human realm, which you guys are very familiar with. In the human realm, you experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. And because of that, we tend to have more motivation to be able to get to enlightenment, because we don't like those painful feelings. When you experience guilt and shame and stress and anxiety, you don't like those kinds of feelings. So oftentimes people are motivated to be able to make their way to enlightenment. This is an ideal existence for an individual to cultivate the consciousness and actually attain enlightenment. We have more motivation, and this is the ideal existence in this human realm. Then there's what's called the afflicted spirits realm. You might think about this as ghosts. These are formless beings that do exist, and they're in the world, and they're unable to get to enlightenment. They actually experience painful feelings and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant, but they can't cultivate their mind enough to be able to get to enlightenment. These beings oftentimes have extensive amounts of craving where they're holding on to certain aspects of the world. This is why people say, like, my house is haunted or something like this. It's not that your house is haunted. It's that there's individuals that are clinging to that, holding on to that house. They haven't moved on because they have this deep craving and clinging, and they're not willing to move on. This is what happens in this afflicted spirits realm. So they have this extensive amount of craving, desire, attachment to people, places, and possessions. Then there's the animal realm, which you're probably also familiar with. They also experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. They can't cultivate their consciousness enough to attain enlightenment. They can grow and develop, particularly with human interaction. We can help them to grow and evolve, but they can't do this just purely on their own. So an animal isn't able to cultivate their consciousness to become wise enough to experience enlightenment, but they can cultivate their consciousness enough to move up in existences to ultimately get into like the human realm. So many of us have had countless experiences in the animal realm, and now we're in this human existence to be able to potentially make our way to enlightenment. Oftentimes, an animal doesn't have motivation to be able to actually get to enlightenment, but they're motivated by operating on these basic survival instincts. Typically what animals do is they kill, they play, they fight, they sit around and sleep, they have sex to reproduce. These are the kind of things that animals do. They're just operating on basic survival instincts rather than cultivating wisdom like a human being has the ability to do. Then there's something called the hell realm. In this realm, they're formless beings. They only experience painful feelings, and they cannot cultivate their consciousness enough to get to enlightenment, but they can burn off their unwholesome, what we call karma, to be able to move on from there. They have extensive amounts of craving, desire, attachment, anger, hatred, and ill will, as well as this ignorance or unknowing of true reality. And once again, this is not a permanent existence. And there's nobody who's sending you to one of these places. It's your own decisions that lead to any particular rebirth. So wherever you're reborn, it's from decisions that you're making. So the fact that you're in this human realm, this is from decisions that you've made in the past to be able to make your way to this human realm. Nobody has sent you here. Nobody has controlled you to come here. These are decisions that each individual being is making. And you would have had to have a certain amount of wholesome and wise decisions in your previous lives to be able to get to this human existence. And now that you're in this human existence, it's an opportunity for you to make your way to enlightenment. But in this hell realm, those beings aren't able to get to enlightenment. They ultimately need to be reborn up into these other realms with an opportunity to get to enlightenment from either the human realm or the heavenly realm. And as I mentioned, none of these realms are actually permanent. Beings are moving in and out of these realms, and the ultimate goal is to move past this by training your mind to get to enlightenment. And getting to enlightenment, you can see that your mind is actually doing that because you'll see more and more peace, more and more joy coming into your mind. The teachings of the Buddha are very different than any other tradition you might have been exposed to, where typically it's like believe, and hope something good happens when you die. Instead, with the teachings of the Buddha, you're learning now, you're reflecting now to independently verify his teachings, and you're practicing now in this life. And because of that, you're actually experiencing the results now in this life. You can see the condition of your mind gradually improving as you're making your way to enlightenment. And having gotten to enlightenment, you'll be able to see it's been 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. You haven't had any anger. There's no frustration. There's no sadness. There's none of those discontent feelings. And you'll know that your mind has experienced enlightenment. And by the time you make your way to enlightenment, you'll know that you're also not going to be reborn, coming back into this world over and over again. Because essentially what the mind is doing is it needs to learn wisdom about this world, so it keeps coming back to the world over and over again with an opportunity to cultivate wisdom. But as long as you're holding on to this world, not willing to let go, you're going to keep coming back to experience it over and over again. But there is an escape for you to be able to escape that. And you can see that your mind is doing that as you're training your mind more and more closely with these teachings. So do you guys have any questions on anything I've been sharing so far about the 5 realms of existence or even the problems that we were talking about? Remember, if you guys could use the microphones here or online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Any questions you guys have? No? Okay, let me check online, see if we have any questions. Welcome to all of you guys online. Okay. I see Rachel there. You missed the first slide. You can go back and look at the recording to be able to hear what I actually shared here. It's on YouTube or Facebook. You'll be able to see what I was teaching there to be able to help you. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the next part. So in terms of understanding and observing someone's past lives, the way that this works is that if you walked out of your house and you looked at the street that you're on, you can see that street very clearly because you just walked out of your house, and now you can look left, you can look right, and you can see this street very, very clearly. But if you move to a higher vantage point, like on the top of a mountain, you can look over the mountain and you can see how all the streets of the town or the city that you live in, how they all connect, or how one town connects to another town. This is the same thing, that when you're moving to this higher consciousness and you're training your mind, you're eliminating the pollution of mind, it's moving to this higher vantage point where you can see more about your current life and what you're experiencing in this life, and you can see more from your other lives as well. Right now, as I mentioned, you might be believing that you only have one life, but you can independently verify this. In our book series, I give you 17 different criteria of how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth, that it's true. And this is how it's actually occurring, that as you're eliminating pollution of your mind, you're moving to a higher and higher consciousness, and you'll be able to see more of your existing life and your other lives as well. And that's coming through eradicating the pollution of the mind. Now, in terms of how your mind moves from this animal existences to the human existence, is the vast majority of rebirths into the human world have come from the animal realm. This is why our mind functions very much like an animal in the unenlightened state. We are not animals, we are human beings. But because our mind has been conditioned from all of these animal existences, when we come into the human world, our mind functions very much like an animal. This is why we oftentimes are very bitter and harsh and hostile or aggressive. This is why we can maybe hoard our food. This is why we could maybe go around and just have sex with lots of different people, just like an animal is doing. This is what the mind is doing. But we're not animals. We're actually humans. But the consciousness, having been experienced so many different animal existences, it functions like an animal, even though we're in the human existence. So a lot of us have come out of the animal realm. And depending on what existence of an animal that we've come out of, we can experience different things. So let's just say an individual was like a rabbit or a squirrel or a bird or something like this, and they come into the human realm. Well, their mind's going to be a little bit more cheerful as they're growing up. They're going to have different experiences. But let's just say somebody was like a lion or a tiger, very fierce, very harsh animal that was killing a lot. Well, this individual being reborn into the human realm, we could see that this individual might be very aggressive, very bitter, very harsh and hostile. Even someone could potentially be a serial murderer. The individual who is a serial murderer, oftentimes they show signs of that as early as 8 years old, 12 years old, 16 years old. You can start seeing this individual starting to head in that direction of being a serial murderer. This is because their consciousness is coming out of the animal world of having been like a tiger or a lion or something like this, and now being in the human realm, they still have that craving to kill, just like they did when they were in the animal realm. And their mind doesn't have enough wisdom and hasn't been trained enough to realize that that's unwise, and they continue to do those things over and over and over again, even though they're in the human realm. So the vast majority of us have been reborn out of the animal realm into this human realm. The unenlightened mind is functioning very much like an animal. If you think about an animal's mind, it lacks memory. It has difficulties to remember things. Not all animals, but a lot of them do. In the human realm, the untrained mind functions that way as well. It will have difficulties with memory. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have that. But in the unenlightened state, you might have difficulties with your memory. You might notice that human beings work through a praise and reward system, very much like animals. An animal, if you give it praise and you give it a reward, it will tend to repeat that behavior over and over and over again. Human beings are very similar. If we get a certificate, if we get a degree, if we get a pat on the back from our boss or our parents, we tend to appreciate that praise and that reward, and we'll tend to repeat that behavior over and over and over again, that positive reinforcement. We also learn from a pack of like species. So when we're a wolf, we learn how to be a wolf from other wolves. Or when we were monkeys, we learned how to be monkeys from other monkeys. Human beings are the same way. We learn how to be human beings from other human beings around us. So depending on how you grew up and the people that you grew up around, your mind might have conformed to the things that you experienced in those environments. So for me, I grew up in a very harsh, a very bitter, a very hostile environment. So as I was growing up, I adopted that kind of thinking within my mind. mind. But then as I started learning and started growing in the teachings of the Buddha, I realized that that was an unwise way to live life, and I was able to transform my mind. But growing up in that pack of like species, the mind will conform to what's going on around you. So if you grew up in a very harsh and bitter and hostile environment, that's what your mind's going to adopt to, just like an animal. A monkey will learn how to be monkeys from other monkeys. Human beings will learn how to be human beings from other human beings. And that's why here in Thailand, you see a lot of people are very peaceful and very joyful because they grow up learning that from each other. And maybe in your home country, it's not maybe quite like that. But here in Thailand, because they've grown up with these teachings, they're growing up learning and developing in this way with the teachings of the Buddha to be able to learn how to be peaceful and joyful and harmonious with the people around them. But not all of us grew up that way. We didn't grow up with those same teachings. So the Thai people have that real advantage within their society that they've been able to grow up learning these teachings. And this is why you'll see people that are so kind and friendly and generous. And of course, you'll see people that are sometimes the opposite of that, even here in Thailand, because not everybody in Thailand is polite, kind, friendly, respectful, but the vast majority of the Thai people have grown up this way, and that's why they function this way. Where you might have grown up in a different type of environment, in a different type of culture, and your mind is conformed to maybe being bitter or harsh or hostile in certain situations, or maybe disrespectful or unkind. So there's certain instinctive behaviors that we have as animals and as humans, and then there's certain learned behaviors, certain things that we learn. And our learned behaviors tends to be what we revert to most frequently as we are growing and we're developing. But as we're first getting started, we kind of turn to our instinctive behaviors. And if we rely on those instinctive behaviors, then we're not going to necessarily be functioning as a better and better human being, which we can do if we train our mind. We have sayings in the English language like, "You're acting like an animal." Right? You might have heard this. I don't know about your language and what language you speak, but you might have these kinds of things. We say things like, "You're fighting like cats and dogs." This is because of our understanding that individuals in the human realm are functioning like an animal. So we say these kinds of things. Humans are actually fascinated with animals because of our past existences in the animal realm. So much so that we create zoos to be able to study animals. We have scientists that study animals. When we grow up, we have stuffed animals, right? We have those around us all the time. We wear animal prints on our clothing. We even have pets as animals, or animals that are pets. Some people even sleep with their animals in their bed, right? We do all these things because we're so fascinated with animals because of our once existence, where we existed in the animal realm many, many, many times. So even in this human realm, we're fascinated with animals because that's where our background is, that we were all animals at one point experiencing countless existences. So now that we're in the human realm, our mind and our consciousness has that memory. And now we say things like, "You're acting like an animal. You are fighting like cats and dogs." We have stuffed animals. We have zoos that we go to see. We wear animal prints on our body. We do all these different kinds of things. And you heard earlier some of the personality traits that we have in the unenlightened state, where we're growling and roaring at other beings, much like an animal would growl and roar. So this animal consciousness from the animal existences is preoccupied with this craving, anger, and ignorance in the ego. But getting to this enlightened mental state is to move from this unenlightened mental state where it's functioning very much like an animal and becoming a better and better human being. That's what the Buddha is teaching you how to do through his teachings. He's not trying to convince you of anything. He's not giving you rules or commandments to follow. He's not guilt, shaming, or fearing you into anything. He's showing you how to cultivate wisdom about the natural laws around you and how to become a better and better human being so that you can shed these animalistic instincts and you can become a better and better human being and function more harmoniously in the world around you. So the path to enlightenment is to evolve out of these animal consciousness and become more and more human, where you can leave behind the difficulties and struggles of those animal existences. Because sometimes we look at animals and we're like, oh, I'd like to be a bird where I'm flying through the sky. That would be so fun to fly through the sky. Or maybe I'd like to be a fish and swim in the sea, right? But in reality, these animals are living a very difficult life. It's very hard to live in the animal world. If you've ever seen like a wild dog that has like insects growing in its ears and, maybe lice on its body, and has a very difficult time caring for its body because it can't do those kinds of things. We are in this human realm where if there's a problem with the body, we can essentially get medical care and fix it, where an animal can't do that by themselves. So it's a very difficult existence to live in the animal world. So you can become a better and better human being, leaving behind the difficulties of these animal existences. Getting to enlightenment is to end the cycle of rebirth, where an individual is learning to become a better and better human. The condition of the planet that we experience, like the pollution of the planet and things like this is because of our decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance, or this unknowing of true reality, this lack of wisdom, that we tend to not care for the planet in the way that we could if we had more wisdom. Like, for example, when I was growing up and I was learning to change the oil in my car, I was taught to just dump the oil in the woods or just dump it in the sewer. And then later in life, I realized how unwise that was. But growing up, that's what everybody did, is we just dumped the oil in the woods, or we just dumped it in the sewer because people didn't know any better. And then over time, we realized how unwise this was, and we started changing our behavior and the way that we functioned. And this is what we can do by learning the wisdom of the teachings of the Buddha. So each individual human can either walk towards the light or they can walk towards the darkness. Which direction we walk is up to us. So this path to enlightenment that the Buddha taught, that I've taught many, many times, it's going to help you to be able to gradually become a better and better human being. And there's opportunities for you to be able to learn how to do that, where you can shed these animalistic instincts. Tomorrow, I'm going to be starting a 5-day course here at the temple that you can attend. It's available at no cost. Everything I share is available at no cost, where tomorrow, starting at 9 a.m. until 3 p.m., all the way through Friday, I'm going to be teaching a foundational course. And you can come to whatever part of that you like. If you like to come for the whole thing, of course, you'll benefit a lot. But if you like to come for 1 day or 2 days, you can do that as well. Totally up to you. But it's going to start tomorrow at 9 a.m. here at the temple. And I'm going to walk students through all the foundational teachings that they need in order to train your mind. Because here we're talking about chapter 20, and this doesn't really give you anything tangible to go out into the world and actually practice in order to train your mind. This is chapter 20, where I've already studied and already shared with students so that they could study what are the actual teachings to transform your mind. So I know many of you guys, this is your first time here and you haven't really dove into the actual core teachings of the Buddha. And there's an opportunity for you to do that this week if you would like to do that. Or you can get the books, you can watch the videos, listen to the podcast. All these things are available for you from our website if you would like to learn from there. Do you guys have any questions? This is everything that I have to share with you guys. Just a kind of a short talk to help people see this evolution of their consciousness, how you're moving from these animalistic instincts to becoming a better and better human being. If you guys have any questions, just let me know. Yes, sir. If you could get a microphone. And ma'am, you have a question as well. If you guys could get the microphones here from the white bowl, this will help us so the people online can hear us. Ma'am, did you have a question as well? I saw you headed towards the microphone. It's on. There you go.
May I know how to prove that the man or human have a next round of life? I mean the rebirth. I'm not very sure. After I die, I have the rebirth. So can you help me to prove that it exists?
Sure. There's 17 different ways to independently verify that there is the cycle of rebirth. I put this into volume 11, chapter 105, and the book series is right over there on the book shelf, and you can download it for free as well. If you look in volume 11, chapter 105, you're going to see 17 different criteria of how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. But I'll just give you a few right now so you can understand a little bit. Do you know what déjà vu is? Déjà vu. Have you ever heard of this? What deja vu is where you're experiencing something right now and it feels utterly familiar to you, but you know you didn't do this in this life. This is like a residual memory coming up to the surface of your mind where it's like, whoa, I know I've done this before. I've had the same conversation or I've done this same activity before. But you know it wasn't in this life because you know that you haven't done this before. You haven't even met this person before. But yet this person seems so familiar to you. This is your residual memories coming to the surface of your mind. Have you ever known of someone or have you ever experienced a situation where someone's like 6 years old, they've never seen a piano a day in their life, and they walk over to the piano and they play masterful piano? Have you ever heard of anything like this? This is residual memories from a person's past life that they've never seen a piano in their life, but at 6 years old, they can walk over to a piano and play masterful piano. So these are just two little things that you can see the evidence of the cycle of rebirth and memories from past lives existing in this life. But oftentimes when these things are happening, like deja vu, it's usually like a 5-second thing or a 10-second thing, and people just push it away out of their mind. But if you start looking at all these different evidence in the world, you can start connecting it together and seeing how these are residual memories from your past lives, or the cycle of rebirth is occurring. You can see the evidence of it if you start looking at it directly. So that's why I give 17 different criteria in the book, so you can piece this all together and you can see the whole spectrum of evidence that is helping you to be able to see the cycle of rebirth, because you might not be putting it together yourself, because we've all had different experiences from time to time, and not everybody has had the same experience. But if you look to that chapter, you'll be able to independently verify it for yourself.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The microphone is impermanent. You can get another one. The batteries need to be changed. The people online won't be able to hear you. So just out of respect for them, if you could use a microphone.
And I'm interested in being a Christian, and recently, and I think you have more experience to connect with those Christian, and why you choose to be a Buddhism.
Jesus actually taught the cycle of rebirth as well, just so you know, since you brought up Christianity. He said, I will come again. That's the cycle of rebirth. He said,
believe in God first and you come here.
He said, I will come again, right? Jesus said, I will come back. This is the cycle of rebirth. Oftentimes people don't realize that Jesus taught that. They think that he only taught that there's one life, but there's also a history about Christianity that people don't understand. But your question was, why do I share the teachings of the Buddha? Because I don't think of myself as I am Buddhist. That is a label that you need to eliminate from your mind. But instead, I practice the teachings of the Buddha, and I share the teachings of the Buddha because I know that they work. You will be able to learn and grow and develop on this path, and you will be able to see that they lead to this enlightened mental state. Where the teachings that Jesus shared, they're more based in belief, and with belief you don't know what's true or false. And it's very challenging through that to be able to get to this mental state that I'm describing as enlightenment. But through the teachings of the Buddha, you can independently verify them. You can cultivate your mind. He shares with you exactly how to get to this enlightened mental state, and you can see that this is actually occurring. Where oftentimes what people do with the Christian teachings is they believe a bunch of things and then they hope something good happens when they die. And at that point, it's too late because you've died. You have no ability to change anything. But the teachings of the Buddha are about getting to a wonderful life now, in this life. It's not about waiting until the end of this life to experience something miraculous. It's about getting to a wonderful life now. And I've seen these teachings work in my life. So that's why I decided to share them with other people, because I had a very difficult, very challenging life, and I'm not interested in seeing countless people continue to experience those same difficulties that I had. So because I rediscovered these teachings, I'm now sharing them with people in a way that they can transform their mind and transform their life so that they don't have to go through the same difficulties and struggles that I did growing up.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Other questions? Yeah. I'm not sure who's first and who's second, but if you guys would like to go. Yeah.
Maybe you first.
Okay.
I also have some question related to the circle of rebirth. I heard another theory before, maybe from Hinduism, but I couldn't remember clearly. It says like we were actually reborn and dead in every single moment. So basically, our life as a human being is continuously funeral. What do you think about it? It's the same things with this circle of rebirth.
Yeah, I don't describe it that way because that's not the way the Buddha talked about it, and that's not what we're actually experiencing, because this being isn't dying every single moment and isn't being reborn every moment. That's not the way it works. And this is one of the challenges, is sometimes people say things and talk about things that aren't true reality. Anything that the Buddha shared is independently verifiable. You can see it for yourself. So if this being is dying every second, then we'd be able to see that. And we don't see that. That's not the experience that we're having. So the Buddha, when he taught the cycle of rebirth, he used the word samsara. And this has been translated into the cycle of rebirth, but in reality, there's nothing that's actually being reborn. The better way to think about this is the cycle of new existence, because every time we're experiencing life, we're experiencing a new existence. So there's nothing that's actually reborn from one life to the next, because that would be permanence if something was continuing all the way through these lives. So this goes into more detail about what the cycle of rebirth is, but I still use the term the cycle of rebirth because that's what a lot of people are used to. But it's important to understand that the Buddha used samsara. That's the word that he used in the Pali text that has been translated as the cycle of rebirth. So it gives people the thought that something is actually being reborn, when in reality, it's a new existence every single time. It's a new body and a new mind every single time. Yeah, you're welcome.
If it's all new existence, why it's always you? You said that's rebirth. How to explain that it's always you?
It's not always you.
It's not.
The Buddha says there is no you. That's the challenge that the unenlightened mind has, is it thinks that this body or this mind is you. And some of the things that people teach is they teach that there's a soul that goes from one life to the next, and you're exactly the same being every single time, just with a different body or a different mind. But the Buddha never taught that. Even though people in the Buddhist world, some people call it Buddhism, you can see in the words of the Buddha, I can show you in his own words, where he doesn't teach that there is a soul, and he doesn't teach that there isn't a soul. He leaves it as an undeclared teaching because it conflicts with his very first, most important teaching, which is called the universal truth of impermanence. He's teaching that things are constantly changing all throughout the world. So as soon as someone starts talking about a soul related to the teachings of the Buddha, you can know right away that they haven't studied the original words of the Buddha, because it conflicts with his very first teaching, the most simple teaching, which is the universal truth of impermanence. So you can see in his own words where he says, this is what I taught. Remember, this is what I taught. And he says, remember what I did not teach. I did not teach this. And he gives you 10 different things that he didn't teach. And one of those things is whether there is a soul or there isn't a soul. He just left it as an undeclared teaching.
But you just said some people would have vivid memory of the previous life. I don't know the meaning of that.
So having a memory about something is different than a soul, right? The way that rebirth works is, if you think about a cardboard box, we have cardboard box A and we have cardboard box B. These two cardboard boxes are completely different size, different color, different shape, different texture, and there are certain contents in cardboard box A. And when cardboard box A dissolves, the contents are still there. They have to go somewhere. So they go into cardboard box B. And now cardboard box B is a completely new mind, a completely new body. But the memories and the cravings from this first life are now in this new box. And now this new mind can remember things from the previous lives. This is how the Buddha understood previous lives. This is how people today have memories. Some people have memories of past lives because the cravings and residual memories are moving from one life to the next. But that's not a soul. Yep. Yes, sir.
Yeah, reincarnation. Do you have a choice?
Yes, it's important first to say that what I'm describing isn't reincarnation, because oftentimes that term is associated with the Buddhist teachings. But when people are describing reincarnation, they typically talk about a soul. And they talk about there's this soul that goes from one life to the next, and you're exactly the same being every single time. And that's how they're describing reincarnation. So what we're describing is this cycle, or this samsara, which I'm referring to as the cycle of new existence, where it's a new existence every single time. And yes, you have a choice. Everything you experience in life is based on your choices. If you choose not to train your mind and you choose not to get to enlightenment, then you're choosing to be reborn over and over and over again. But if you train your mind and you get to this peaceful and joyful mental state in this life, then you're choosing to get to this peace and joy, and you won't be reborn again. You will experience enlightenment. And the Buddha leaves that as an undeclared teaching as well. Once you get to enlightenment and die, what happens next? He leaves it as an undeclared teaching. Wisely, he leaves it as an undeclared teaching. But by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is so peaceful and so joyful, you're not going to care what's next, if there is something next. So this life, in getting to enlightenment, this path, it isn't about an afterlife. It isn't about experiencing a wonderful afterlife. It's about getting to a wonderful life now in this existence, so that you can experience the peace and joy now in this life. And those are choices for you to make. Nobody can convince you to get to enlightenment. Nobody can force you to get to enlightenment. Nobody's going to give you enlightenment. It's through your own journey, your own development. But you're going to need teachers and guides to help you in that journey, to point out for you the things that you need to learn and grow and develop. But it's your own independent journey to that enlightened mental state through your own decisions. So it ultimately comes down to your own free will.
Right. One thing. Enlightenment. Yeah.
Could you use the mic?
Sorry, enlightenment. Do you have to be dead to be enlightened, or can you be a living person?
I'm not hearing you.
Can you be a living person and be the enlightened one?
Yes, that's what it is. When you're enlightened, the mind is experiencing in your current life the peace and the joy of the enlightened mental state. It's not a destination that you go to. It's a mental state that you're experiencing in this life. And it's occurring through the purification of your mind and eradicating certain pollutions out of your mind. So when you get to enlightenment, say you get to enlightenment at the age of 20 or 30 or 40 or any other age, you will live the rest of your life in that mental state of enlightenment, where the mind's completely peaceful and joyful. Life is no longer a struggle and difficult for you anymore. Everything is at ease for you.
Okay, thank you. One last question. Mm-hmm. You got Buddhist monk and you got Buddha.
I'm sorry, say again?
You got a Buddhist monk and you got Buddha. What's the difference? I mean, one's dead, obvious.
Sure. So a Buddha is an individual who gets to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people. And countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So this is the unique criteria of what a Buddha is. Other individuals who are on the path, they're trying to make their way to enlightenment, but they're going to need teachers and they're going to need guides. A Buddha is very rare in the world. A Buddha that the world is currently aware of existed 2,500 years ago. And as far as the world knows, there hasn't been a Buddha since that time frame. So a Buddha is a unique and rare individual who's gotten to enlightenment by themselves. They then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. And then they will preserve their teachings so that other people can get to enlightenment after their death. So a monk or ordained practitioner or a household practitioner, they're on the journey to enlightenment, but they're not going to be a Buddha when they get to enlightenment. They will be an enlightened being.
Okay, I'm not too sure about that. What makes him a Buddha then?
Because he got to enlightenment by himself without the help of any teachers or any guides, where everybody else is going to need help from a teacher or a guide. And then also, like if you got to enlightenment, you're not necessarily going to share the teachings with other people. Maybe you'd like to be a business person. Maybe you would like to be a salesperson. Maybe you would like to be a tour guide. Maybe you would like to do something else. You might not decide to be a teacher of these teachings. And because you didn't discover these teachings on your own, you're also not going to preserve them, because we've already preserved them from the Buddha. So those are the unique criteria of what makes a Buddha, where everyone else, they're still on the journey to get to enlightenment, but they're doing it with the help of teachers and guides. They're not dedicating the rest of their life necessarily to sharing those teachings, and they're not preserving the teachings. All right. Other questions? Yep. Someone back there.
In terms of the evolution of consciousness, is anything in the teachings that refer to gender, transgender? Is a significant difference between the genders. I've happened to father a boy and a girl, and it's significant differences in consciousness, in awareness, in kindness between a man and a woman. And they are well documented. Is anything in the teachings that refer to that?
The way that the consciousness works between a male and a female, or any other gender that someone might consider themselves, it works exactly the same way. The contents that are inside the consciousness are different from person to person, not only from gender to gender, but even within one gender, right? You can have a male or a female that is more feminine or more masculine, of what we would refer to as more feminine or more masculine. But the way that the mind functions in terms of these pollutions and in terms of the natural laws, it's exactly the same. So the same thing that a man needs to do in order to make their way to enlightenment is the same exact things that a female would need to do in order to make their way to enlightenment. Your mic went out. You need to just press there you go. It's on now. Oh, it's gone again. I think nobody's changed the batteries in these for a little while.
Then my preconception that males are somehow, for lack of a better word, inferior to women. Is that an illusion of my mind?
Yeah, that's your conceit, where you're judging and measuring and comparing beings, looking at some beings as higher or lower. And this is also a perception. What a perception is your views and opinions about the world that the mind will oftentimes cling to. And this is something that you're going to need to let go of and look at everybody as equal. And the more you experience time around people and see that there's all different flavors and different types of people, and you don't have to measure and compare them as being superior or inferior, just look at everybody as equal. And this is what's going to help promote the best improvement to your mind.
Yeah, in my mind, it's not a secret that most of Is that better? Yeah. In my mind, it's not a secret that most of the aggression on the planet comes from males. Yeah, and I guess that is an illusion in my mind, is it?
Did you say most of the problems in the world come from males? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So you wouldn't be able to look across the entire world and see every single problem in the world and say that every single problem comes from males, or the majority of them come from males. You don't have that level of insight to be able to say something like that and to know it to be true. This is just a perception that the mind is forming, and it would be wise to let that go.
Got it. Thanks.
And by the way, any mind that has craving, anger, and ignorance, there's going to be issues and problems with that person's mind, and they're going to be making decisions, whether they're male or female or any other gender. So it's not the gender that determines whether there's problems in someone's life. It's the condition of their mind. And if the condition of their mind is polluted, they're going to be making decisions that are unwise, that are leading to unwholesome results. And if their mind has been purified through training on the path to enlightenment, they won't be causing any harm to the people around them, and there won't be any problems for that individual. And it doesn't matter what gender that person is. It matters of whether you train your mind or not.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Hello. You had mentioned about in Buddhism, people are beyond being high or low, being controlled by their passions or their anger issues or any extreme emotions. But I imagine that monks as well have goals, dreams, desires that they want to achieve, perhaps in the material world as well. So my question is, what is the difference between when a monk wants to achieve something, a goal, and a layperson?
Okay, a few things here. Is every ordained practitioner isn't enlightened, right? And nowadays, very few of them are actually enlightened. So an enlightened mind and an unenlightened mind are going to function very differently. So what you heard me describing, at least what you just mentioned, is an enlightened mind. An enlightened mind is not going to have anger and frustration. They're not going to experience those difficulties and struggles. It sounds like we have a microphone on back there giving a little feedback. An enlightened being is going to be beyond those daily struggles, that their mind's going to be completely at ease. They're going to be able to function peacefully and joyfully no matter what they're doing in their day-to-day life. An unenlightened being, whether they're ordained or unordained, they're going to be having difficulties and struggles. When we talk about craving, desire, attachment, this longing, yearning, what some people hear is they hear, like, gosh, that does that mean I'm not going to pursue anything in life? Because that's what you're used to. You're used to pursuing things out of a longing and a yearning and chasing pleasant feelings. And you're even referring to it, as a lot of people do, as a goal. But this is where the mind is not understanding that this longing, yearning, and chasing after things, that's not a goal. A true goal is something that you can work towards gradually with wise decision making, and you're not forming your feelings on whether you accomplish that thing or not. If you're pursuing something and you get it and you're happy, and you don't get it and you're angry or frustrated, that's a craving, desire, attachment. That's a longing. That's a yearning. That's wanting things to be a certain way. And now if I get it, you're happy. And if you don't get it, you're angry or sad. But if you are all the way over here on the other side, where you are dull and lethargic and complacent, your life's not going to be peaceful and joyful there either. And that's the two sides that the mind can typically see with the lack of wisdom in the unenlightened state. But there's this middle way that the Buddha taught that it's challenging for people to be able to see, where you gradually work towards your goals and objectives, where you have certain interests and you're motivated and you have ambition and you're working towards these goals and objectives, but you're not forming your feelings on whether you accomplish them or not. So for example, look at the life of the Buddha. He was interested in sharing his teachings with the entire world, and he had the goal and interest to be able to do that. But he wasn't doing it with craving and longing and yearning, because if he would have been able to accomplish that, he would have been happy, and if he didn't, he would have been sad or frustrated. He knew his teachings were going to reach the entire world someday, but it wouldn't be during his lifetime, because the language that he spoke wasn't spoken by the entire world. So he just gradually, over a 45-year period, from the age of 35 to 80, gradually shared his teachings into the world. And he did that as a goal, as an objective, or as an interest. And now you can learn how to work and progress on this middle way, where you're not forming your feelings based on something. So as an ordained practitioner or a household practitioner, you can have goals, you can have objectives, you can have things that you're working towards, but you would like to learn how to not form your feelings on whether you accomplish that thing or not, because otherwise your mind's going to be doing this, where even me, I have the goal to share these teachings with as many people as possible. And when I come here and there's people to share it with, great. And if I came here and there's nobody here, that's okay too, right? Because when I first started teaching here, nobody knew I was teaching. And I would sometimes show up and there was nobody here, right? And now I show up and there's usually a room full of people, especially during the busy season. People can't even get in. There's so many people. And then sometimes we start with a certain number of people and then people get up and leave. Okay, well, that's just impermanence. I don't have a craving or a desire, a longing, a yearning to hold on to these people to stay in the class. Instead, for the people who are interested to learn, I share it with them. But you're going to have things coming and going in and out of your life all the time. So if you chase and chase and chase and try to hold on to it permanently, when things are changing, you'll be frustrated. So you need to learn how to gradually work towards things as a goal, objective, or interest. Yes, that's what you're learning in your practice. That's why this book is called Developing a Life Practice, the Path That Leads to Enlightenment, because your life practice needs to completely change. One of the ways to think about this is that an unenlightened mind is like an old archaic operating system for a computer. And it's really cumbersome and it's very challenging to use, but individuals just keep using it over and over and over again. And now what you do on the path to enlightenment is you're upgrading your operating system. And as you're upgrading your operating system on the computer, it's a little bit confusing and it's challenging to use because you can't quite figure out where they moved the settings to and where they moved the icons to. But after a couple of weeks of learning that new system, wow, it works so much better. You're so glad that you upgraded to this new operating system. And it's the same thing that needs to happen with the mind. You need to learn and upgrade your operating system where you're not clinging and holding on to these relationships so tightly, but also you're not over here where you could care less about the people in your life too. That there's this middle way where you can learn how to have relationships and enjoy them, but you're not clinging to them and holding on to them so tight. And this takes practice and learning. You have a question? Yeah, that mic's on.
One thing I want to ask is how to counterbalance my consciousness and my emotions, because I think sometimes I just reduce to the slaves of my emotions for the cravings and the angers, and it's so volatile. And I think it's important to admit my desire, but sometimes my desire drives me to do the things that I'm struggling with. So I just want to know how to counterbalance my emotions and the consciousness.
Okay, so let me back way up. This particular slide deck, it's got all the chapters that I teach in this program. I'm going to back way up all the way to here. Okay, this is back in chapter 5. Okay, this is called the Eightfold Path. This is what somebody's learning when they first get started on the path to enlightenment. They're learning each one of these steps using the original words of the Buddha. And I walk students through this, and I'm going to be doing this on Tuesday morning here at the temple, where I'm going to walk students through, helping them to understand each one of these factors. Because you're going to need things like meditation, but you're going to need other things as well. Because that desire that you have right now, that longing, yearning that you say motivates you and pushes you to perform, at the end of the day, you feel exhausted. You feel tired when you're chasing after things, because sometimes you're going to get what you want and you feel so happy, but other times you don't get what you want and you feel exhausted and you feel tired. And this is not a really good way to live life. There's a better way of life. That's what the Buddha taught. By the time you get to enlightenment, you have sustainable energy all day long. You don't get depleted and exhausted. You will get sleepy, but you won't get depleted and exhausted. But when you're out there chasing your cravings, you're going to make unwise decisions in some situations. And when you're doing that, it's going to produce unwholesome results. Because let's just say I was chasing money and I really wanted money. I'm going to chase it and chase it and chase it and chase it. And in some situations, I'm going to make unwise decisions just because I want that money. And now maybe I'm stepping on people. Maybe I'm filing documents with the government that are lies and that are not true, and now maybe I have legal consequences because of this. Maybe I'm hiring people very fast and very quick. I'm not taking my time to really think about who I'm hiring in my company, and maybe I build a certain company, but it all collapses and it all falls apart. So when you have craving, your mind's chasing and trying to get to these pleasant feelings. It's almost like a drug addict, like a person who's taking heroin or cocaine, chasing a high. That's what the mind is doing in the unenlightened state. But again, if you were on this other side where you were dull and lethargic, lazy, you're not going to feel good there too. So what this Eightfold Path is going to teach you is how to come to the middle, where you can gradually work towards goals, objectives, or interests, and you need to learn it inside and out and understand it as a comprehensive teaching. So there's nothing that I can share with you in 2 minutes or 5 minutes that's going to drastically improve the condition of your emotions and what you're experiencing, other than to help you learn some meditation and other couple things here and there. But this teaching, it takes me 2.5 hours to teach it to you and walk you through it all the way. That's what's going to transform your life if you learn and practice this Eightfold Path. So that's what I would invite you to do, whether you come on Tuesday or not, whether you listen to our live stream. I record these things, so YouTube and our podcast has it, our book has it, we have audiobooks, all of it's available for you, even personal guidance. If you'd like to sit down and talk privately after you've learned this, I can help you understand more and more and more. I do all of this for no cost, because I know that these teachings work, and I'm motivated and interested in seeing other people get access to them so you can experience this enlightened mental state. So your emotions are coming from your longing, yearning, and chasing after things. So you're going to need to learn how to restrain your mind and pull it back almost like a horse, so that you can learn how to walk this middle way and gradually work towards your goals and objectives without forming your inner feelings on whether you accomplish it or not.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I think we have some more questions.
So I've got questions. I just wonder, like, if you're all a Buddhist or Buddha, like believing like everything in your life is preset, or you believe like you can proactively make changes to change your fate or life.
Can you say that a little bit louder? I can't quite hear you.
Okay, I just wonder, like, if you believe in fate, like everything is preset in your life.
Oh, like fate.
Yes,
Yeah,
fate or
okay.
destiny, yeah.
So I don't believe anything at all. There's no beliefs in my mind whatsoever, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. I know the truth on these topics, right? So I've independently verified these things. There is no fate. There's no predetermination. Oftentimes people think there's good luck or bad luck, or there's destiny or fate. In reality, what you have is a bunch of decisions that each individual is making, and those decisions are leading to a certain result. This is called Gama, or some people refer to it as karma. The word Gama is the Pali language, where the word karma is from the Sanskrit language. What this refers to is cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. And when you make decisions wisely or unwisely, it will either produce wholesome results or wholesome Gama, or it will produce unwholesome Gama or unwholesome results. This is why it's important to cultivate wisdom in this natural law, so that you can go out into the world and make wise decisions and experience wholesome results. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, you're only experiencing wholesome results in your day-to-day life. So if we resign ourselves to think that what we experience in life is good luck or bad luck, or destiny or fate, or there's a being like God that's controlling us, or if we resign ourselves to think that what we experience is because of everybody else, you're locked in. You can't change anything about your life. It's like you're a robot. And you know that's not true. You can independently verify this for yourself. Because ask yourself, who forced you to sit in that particular seat where you're sitting right now? Was that your free will? Yeah, that was your free will. You chose to sit there. What about the hairstyle that you have right now? Who chose that? You chose it. What about your clothing, or where you work, or what type of glasses that you're wearing? These are all choices that you're making, and it's cause and effect, or action and result. So there's no fate. There's no predetermination of what your life is going to become. And if you resign yourself to that type of thinking, you're locked in. It's like, all right, well, I'm just a robot. I'm just going to go through this life and just experience whatever is predetermined for me. There's none of that exists in the world. Everything you experience is a result of your decisions. Even you being here in Thailand, somehow you earned money somewhere, or somebody gave you money and you decided to purchase a ticket, fly to Thailand. You somehow learned about this temple. You came to this temple. These are all a sequence of events that occurred. Nobody predetermined that for you, but it's your decisions that are leading to those things. And the beauty in this is that if you understand that everything you experience is a result of your decisions, then if there's anything in your life that you don't particularly care for, you just cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. Whereas if it's everybody else that's causing these things, or if it's fate, You can't do anything. But when you understand that it's your decisions, hey, there's something you don't like in your life, learn some wisdom, make different decisions, and now make different you'll experience different results. And that's the beauty about this life, is that anything you don't particularly care for that's going on in your life, you can change it. And now you just need the wisdom of how to do that. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Could you please explain the concept of the ego?
Ego.
Yeah, and I was thinking that we're all born with ego, but it seems that we're trying to eliminate or get rid of that ego.
Yeah.
But it seems like a natural process that we all have ego. And so I want to know more about that.
Everyone who's unenlightened will have ego, but an enlightened being won't have ego because they would have dissolved it. What the ego is it's like a collection of your experiences that you've had in this life and the way you think about yourself and the people around you. You're not born with this, but the conditions to form it you're born with that. And now, because of your craving and your ignorance and conforming to what's going on around you, you will form an ego and you will form the conceit where you're measuring and comparing people, putting yourself above people or below people, and now looking down on people or looking up to people. So the goal is to eliminate this from your mind, where you just see yourself as being equal. And there's certain teachings that you can implement that'll train your mind to eliminate this and eradicate it from the mind. It all starts with this Eightfold Path. You need to start with this in order to really actively train the mind. But then there's specific teachings in this first book, in volume 1, chapter 16, where you can learn how to target the ego and really eradicate it out of the mind. And that's why you need to dissolve it, because when your ego's arising, where you're boastful and arrogant and prideful, looking down on people, people don't like that and they'll push you aside. And you'll have difficulties in your day-to-day relationships, where sometimes people think, like in a work environment or professional environment, you have to be egotistical in order to get credibility and show people what you can actually accomplish. But there's a way to be able to enter into a professional environment without ego, and you can be just as successful. You can actually be more successful when you don't have that ego in there, and you'll be more successful in your personal relationships as well, because otherwise people are just going to push you aside. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome.
Hello. Yeah, I just wanted to go back a little bit to her question about the destiny and fate and luck and the rest of it. So I'll just give you like a really recent example. I had traveled to China and I was just like standing in the hotel, struggling with the hotel manager to give me some instructions on how I can get a SIM card or where I can book a ticket for the train and stuff like that. And the person that they said could speak English could barely understand anything, even when I used like a translate app to write it in English and convert it in Chinese, you can understand it. So there was a lot of like misunderstanding. Hello? Yeah. So while we were like having this conversation, there was like these two girls who were just checking into the hotel, and they overheard me. And they saw that I was frustrated, so they just came up to me and said, like, no, hey, can we help you? Like, what do you need and what do you need? So anyway, the long story short is basically that they not only helped me buy a ticket that was like 800 yuan or something, which, you know, like $200. And she just said, like, you know, I'll just pay for it and you just pay me whenever. And we just met. And then I went out looking for the SIM card. And this office that they told me before to go to, that didn't have it, and they said you need to go to the main office. And so I started walking to the main office. I have a tap on my back, and it's the same two girls. So they had like bought me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I get the gist of the story. Yeah.
Anyway, so the thing is, like, we ended up spending the entire day in Chengdu, like, you know, hanging out. And we've become like one of the best friends. Mm-hmm. It's just like, so my decision was to get to China But my decision was not to start talking to them. They approached me, and that just completely changed my entire the essence of the trip, or like the spirit of the trip or whatever, because it just started out so good. I had like the best day in Chengdu, and then they helped me through everything. And then every time in China I had a problem, I could just message her, or I could just put her on the phone to talk to someone. You know, that if I can understand something or whatever, I would just like call her, and I would just say, can you talk to him and tell him blah, 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 blah. And throughout the 2-3 weeks that I was there, it just completely, you know, like changed the whole thing. What I'm saying is that there are some people that you are just bound to meet, and it is just complete. You have no idea how you end up meeting these people, and that happens in a very, very weird sort of circumstances. And there are some people that you meet for like, you know, 5 minutes, and they become like people who are your best friends for the rest of your life. But then there are people that you grow up with for 25 years, and that friendship is so fickle. You know, or they just disappear and they just lose faith in you, or like something happens, or they just like move away and then there's no contact. So I just wanted to kind of like find out that in context of destiny and like, you know, or luck, none of that is a fact. Then how do we explain these kind of occurrences?
It's the same thing. It's the natural law of karma. Those people that were in your life for 25 years and the relationship dissolved and, it didn't turn out well. These are from decisions that you're making. You chose those particular friends, and there's certain things that you might have not seen in those individuals. And those individuals also changed over time. It's a sequence of events. There's no predetermination or fate. You were in that hotel. Those people were there, they overheard you, they stepped in and talked with you. It's a sequence of events that is occurring. There's no being or entity or force or anything like this that is controlling these kinds of things to happen. And if you see it that way, you're not seeing true reality, because there's no being that's doing that. There's nothing that's controlling what you experience in your day-to-day life. It's a sequence of events, because if those girls would have came up to you and said, hey, sir, can we help you? And you're like, if you were like angry and frustrated with them, they're not going to help you, right? It was results of your decisions. You chose to say, oh yes, I would like your help, please, can you help me, or whatever you ended up saying. These are a sequence of events, and there were certain decisions that you made that led to that, and certain decisions that they made that led to that. It's a sequence of events. It's not destiny or fate or good luck or bad luck. It's just the results of decisions that are being made. That's it. Oftentimes the mind tries to complicate things and see things that aren't there, but it's very simple and very straightforward.
Yeah, I guess like the second part of that question was like, how sometimes you meet someone and they're just something that just clicks with that person, and they just so right in terms of you just gel very quickly, and in 5 minutes you become like, long-lasting friends. Mm-hmm. Is there some sort of a effect of your previous life in factoring in that you might have been good friends with them in some previous life, and so when is a same example as some kid like Mozart, who couldn't hear, who couldn't see, but as a 6-year-old he played piano masterfully. There's no way he could have known that. It's the same way that, because it followed from his previous life.
Yeah, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. In some situations, yes, that can be the case, but it doesn't have to be. But still, that's not destiny or fate or good luck or bad luck. It's the results of decisions that are being made. It's karma.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Could you please explain a little bit more about the law of nature? Because I feel like most of the time we suffer a lot just because we obey the law of nature. But is that something we can learn directly first before we or we have to explore it by ourselves?
Okay, so you're not suffering because of the laws of nature or the natural laws of existence. You're actually suffering because of your lack of wisdom of those natural laws. So when you're in the world and you're not understanding the way the world is, then you will suffer and have difficulties and struggles because of that. So these natural laws is what the Buddha taught. Everything that the Buddha taught is the natural laws of existence. And you would need guidance to be able to learn that, but a teacher is here to be able to help you and guide you and show you how to learn and how to progress on the path. But it's up to you to actually do that learning and that growth and that development.
But sometimes I feel like we couldn't realize there's what's exactly the truth it is.
That's why you need to learn, examine, and investigate the teachings, then reflect on them to independently verify them, and then practice them. That's where a teacher is like a tour guide pointing out for you the things that you need to learn, but then it's you that is doing the work to individually investigate those teachings to be able to determine what is true and what is false to cultivate wisdom. Right now, just not having any guidance or instruction on the path, yeah, you would have a hard time to understand the natural laws. But with guidance, you'd be able to slowly learn and grow and develop to understand what those natural laws are. But you still have to do the work to read the books, to attend the classes, to be able to understand the foundational teachings. Yeah, you're welcome. More? Yeah. Normally I have an official end to class, but since you guys are asking questions, I'm just going to keep letting you guys ask questions. So go ahead. I think it's on. It was on anyway.
Okay, thank you. Referring to his previous question, can some of these heavenly entities or the ones in hell influence people?
Just like you can be influenced by another human being, you can be influenced by formless beings as well, but it's your wisdom that's going to determine what you choose to do or not do. That's why it's so important for you to cultivate wisdom. So just like if you were with a friend and they were like, hey man, let's go get some cocaine. You're like, that's unwise. I don't think I'm going to do that. But if you'd like to do it, have fun. See you later, right? You can choose to do that based in your wisdom. So the same thing with these formless beings, when they're trying to influence you in one way or another, it's your wisdom that is going to decide what you choose to do and what your results are. But once you get to what's called the first jhana, this is a enhanced quality of mind that you experience on the way to enlightenment. Those beings aren't going to be able to influence you any further. They don't even try because they know that you're too wise at that point. Okay, I think you guys are questioned out. Let me check online. All right. Great conversation, guys. All right, so I'm just going to end by thanking all of you guys. Thank you for your interest to learn. Thank you for deciding that today is a day that you'd like to learn the teachings of the Buddha. If you guys would like to learn more, there's opportunity for you guys. Tomorrow, as I mentioned, I'm going to be starting the Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course at 9 a.m. So if you're here, you'll be able to learn. And that's a really good, solid course that's going to walk you through building a foundation, because this particular class, it's really kind of far down the path. But if you start with the very beginning teachings, that's what's going to really help you get headed in the direction of eliminating the anger and the sadness and frustration and all those other discontent feelings. So I'm going to be starting that tomorrow. So you're more than welcome to attend. But if you're traveling and you're not going to be here at all next week, you can also attend these by our live stream. If you get onto our website, you'll be able to see the way to log into any of the classes that I'm teaching here, and you can get access to all these books and things like that. So thank you all for coming, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.